Hello and welcome to my show, Could You Be More Specific? I'm your host, Jonathan Steele, coming to you by the way of the Stay Well podcast. And on this episode of Could You Be More Specific, I'm going to title it For the Record. And the topics I'm going to cover, what happened recently with Bill Cosby and him being sentenced this week. I'm also going to touch on Will Smith and the parallels that they kind of share overall, but obviously they have contrasting differences. But I'm going to get started first with Bill Cosby. And like a lot of you, when you saw it on the news, you've been following obviously this has been ongoing now for some years now. And he was officially sentenced on September 25th to 3 to 10 years. And he was jailed immediately. And obviously it's been like a lot of the reactions are like what you would expect. It's either extremely polarizing on one end, where for the people that, since he is guilty of this crime and was found guilty as well, people feel like it's a vindication, obviously, because it's a crime. And I've said this before on previous pods. I do believe crimes don't have an expiration date. And if you commit a crime, especially against a human being in the context that he did, sexually assaulting someone and raping them, then you should be held accountable for that. There is nothing that in the law that states, hey, if you made a great television show, you're exempt from paying the consequences for those actions. On the other end, I see, because I know there's been some postings where with what's going on this week with Brett Kavanaugh, and also, the president's been under this microscope. It's been multiple other men in the news that have been under this spotlight, and it's not the same intensity of covering it. And I think that's where the national media and people who work in media outlets have a responsibility to shine that light on it, because to me, I think you lose credibility if at all it comes across as bias. And I think that's what's really disappointing overall with what's going on with the Bill Cosby situation. And this is where I think where the Me Too movement and people that are associated with that organization and other organizations as well that work in the country about it, by really, being steadfast and really attacking this issue. Because if you don't do that and you're only selectively picking people that you want to identify from it, it loses its credibility, which means a lot of people then don't believe in it. And to me, that then undercuts what you're trying to do. And I remember at one point that was going on where the Me Too movement had a number of celebrities get behind the thing with R. Kelly and about boycotting his music and about attacking him. And that same week that was happening, whether people agree with it or not, a lot of people, when you read comments on it, it's like, okay, so we're going to do this specifically for R. Kelly. Why can't you just group R. Kelly and Donald Trump together, our president, if they're both being accused of the same thing? And yeah, it gets mentioned, but it's not going to get talked about with the same energy. And to me, that's what's unfortunate whenever we start doing this, because then people fall into I'm just going to take my team's side. And I think that's what happens a lot of times when crimes happen in general, is depending on who it is, how it affects them, they'll then just focus on, well, since you're not going to be fair on this end, then I'll just go on my team and I'll cover that. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. And I know, one of the reasons why I'm definitely calling this episode For the Record is because it's important that people understand that time and principles are indifferent to you. They don't change. The human beings that choose to live by them interpret them differently and decide to make decisions based off it, but the terms don't change. So I think it's important that this is a part of Bill Cosby's record. Just like the star on the Walk of Fame, that was earned. You can't retroactively go back and dismiss that. And we shouldn't, because life doesn't dismiss you. The principles that you decided to live by, or that are in place for us to live by, don't change. Human beings do. And I think it's important to honor that. And this is not at all a defense thing, but when I saw them defacing his star, it's the same thing with Donald Trump. Why would you deface his star? He earned the star. People signed signatures for him to get it. People knew about the Central Park Five and his feelings on that back then. And then he does The Apprentice, which is a huge hit show for NBC, and using the OJ song and comes up with You're Fired, and people ate that up. And it led to him getting a star. So now that he decided to kind of reveal certain aspects of himself that some I think is true in some ways from my interpretation of it, and some that it's not, because he's always been a media personality. He's always liked staying in the news. He doesn't care if it's anything good or bad. He just wants to be in the news. But he earned the star. Don't desecrate it. Why are we going to retroactively go back and change this? People got to get used to seeing things that they don't like. And this goes into maturity as a society. And this is what's, got so many people in America so divided. I think it should stand. When you look at the Ronald Reagan era, people used to dismiss him because he was an actor. But Republicans loved him and got behind him. It's kind of fascinating now that they've always dismissed Hollywood, but yet some of the most known figures that have made the biggest impact on their party are celebrities. It's fascinating to see this kind of turn go on. And I know for Bill Cosby, people say that do you feel sorry for him? I feel sorry for his family. And I feel sorry for the victims of the families that he hurt. But I can say I feel bad for his actual intermediate family as well as his extended family, because if you're an extended family member of Bill Cosby, you may not speak to him that often. You probably, like a lot of us in our families, we talk every now and again. We may see each other now and again, but you're just related. And I feel bad for them because now their name is forever going to be damaged in some way. And, and that goes, whether you're talking about his wife, I don't think you should attack her. His children, you shouldn't attack them. They had nothing to do with that. And then when it comes to his other extended family members, whether they're cousins or nephews or nieces, they didn't have anything to do with that. That's the opportunity for you to then show compassion and just hold him to that. Don't attack his family. And that goes for the people that are attacking the victims. This doesn't just hurt them, it hurts their family and their loved ones because they're in a pretty paralyzed position of trying to help their loved one deal with something so traumatic that went against them. So I think there's a lot that can be learned here in terms of how we start to move forward and understanding that things that make us feel uncomfortable, sometimes it's designed to make us feel uncomfortable and we have to think through it. And that's not the worst thing. But I'm going to transition out of that topic and I'm going to talk about Will Smith and what's so crazy about with what Will Smith and just what he means to as not just a black culture, but just the kind of global figure he has become over these past 25 to 30 years that he's been in the business. It's incredible. And what's even more kind of bittersweet, but also kind of like a silver lining is, Bill Cosby was convicted on Will Smith's birthday. There's no way to really kind of predict that would happen. But to me, that's kind of fascinating. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of conspiracy theorists that could, put their own 2 cents into that. But I thought about that when I saw that he was convicted and I saw Will's, birthday and just some of the goals that he's accomplished and some of the things that he wants people to kind of reach out and do. And I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, in looking at Will and everything he's done in his career. And, he's definitely someone that's always looked to, elevate the people around him and opening up his mind. And he's always carried himself with a level of integrity. And he's always been very intelligent about the things he's always done. He's extremely family oriented, which I think is really good. I know Will and Jada, just what they mean as a couple, especially to black people, is pretty much unmatched. I know a lot of people like to bring up Beyonce and Jay, and they're great, but they'll never be Will and Jada from a couple standpoint. Just one, just the way Will and Jada match up, and the way they've weathered so much. And I'm not really big on conspiracies. I try and stay away from that kind of stuff. And listen, as much as people like to see things kind of go well for people, things start to chip away. And the fact that they've kind of always stayed above the fray as a couple, to me, has always been one of the greatest strengths you can have, because being successful personally and professionally while things are happening against you that are, one, out of your control, and two, that are inflammatory, is one of the best signs of character. Because at that time, and from that standpoint, when you're facing people that are trying to tear you down, it can be an emotional and mental toll on you. And the fact that they've always seemed like, hey, we're just going to roll with the punches and this is how it goes, to me, has always been really great. And it's even like that for their children, primarily with Jane and Willow, is that when you look at them, they are their own individual beings. And you can tell by the way they carry themselves, the way they talk, that they have a mind of their own. And at times people will agree or disagree with that. But that stems from them as parents. And one of the more fascinating things to see with Will, especially since he decided to enter the social media realm, which is also a testament to how smart and humble he is that what he noticed what worked in 2007, 2008 doesn't work now. And I heard, Kevin Hart talk about this recently on Sway, is that, all this is earned. It's not by accident. And a lot of people think that when they're in certain positions, it's going to last forever. And it made me think back to in another relation with Will Smith, and this is something that people should always think about, is when The Rock spoke with the Lakers months ago, and him and Will were at the same agency, and he had some films that didn't work for him at the time. And he just told his agents at the time that he wanted to do it bigger, better, stronger than Will Smith. And he says everyone in that room looked at him like he was insane. Because in 2007, 2008, around that time, 06, in that era, Will Smith was undeniably possibly the biggest movie star on the planet. And for The Rock to say that, they're looking at him like he's crazy. You fast forward 10 years later, that's flipped. And what you see with Will is like, okay, I got to adapt now. Being mysterious doesn't help you. So now I got to do stuff that, makes people connect with me. And this is probably the best you've seen Will Smith, where you really feel like you truly know him, or you truly got an idea of what he is from a personality standpoint. And to a man, most people feel like the best Instagram page out right now is Will's. And because he's so inspiring and motivating. So I want to close by saying, yes, one legend, unfortunately, has met what he has done, and he had to be held to accountable with that with Bill Cosby. But we also have another living legend in Will Smith that continues to inspire, and hopefully has years to come with work. And his character has always been a shining example for not just, people in general, but for, specifically black people in general. So those are just some of the thoughts that I had on that topic. I'll definitely probably be following up on that pretty soon, because it was a fascinating week in general. I want to thank D for all the work that he's done producing these videos. I know it's very time consuming, so he does a lot to make this show go. I want to thank you guys for supporting the podcast. Definitely look for more shows coming from D in the future as well. Definitely support us and become a patron. Definitely like, share, and follow. Spread this video around as much as you possibly can. I'm looking forward to doing more of these shows again in the future. Again, my name is Jonathan Steele. Thank you for listening. Could you be more specific? Coming to you from the Stay Well Podcast. Definitely continue to follow us. And I hope you guys have a good one, and look forward to talking to you guys real soon.